Okay, so now let's move to section 2, that is the core, the agreement substance. Now, in this section, we will be dealing with those clauses that form the core or the substance of the agreement. In this section, we'll be learning about clauses such as definition clause, parties clause, term and duration clause, scope of work, service or deliverables, and the compensation and the payment terms. Now, these clauses are very important because they form the main context of an agreement. They form the the substance of an agreement. Let's start with the definition clause. Now, definition clauses are basically the clause which define the key terms that you commonly encounter while entering into an agreement. Here, the terms are defined so as to avoid the ambiguity or the confusion among the parties. These are basically defined so that both the parties, understand a particular term in the same meaning. They must understand it in the same sense and to avoid ambiguity. Let me give an example of such kind of clause. And here I will be using the same example that I have provided you while discussing the preamble section about a consultation agreement that is entered by ABC Corporation and John regarding the formation of their app. Now, while entering into this agreement, the term services has been defined in the definition clause. What does the term service mean in this agreement? It will mean the development of the alpha app. Now, basically, in our example, the corporation, the company is basically hiring the consultant for the development of an alpha app, and this will include as service as more fully described in Exhibit A. So basically, the development of an alpha app will come under the definition of service. Next, this is the first definition that is included under this agreement. Now, the second definition is about the confidential information. Now, it basically defines that what exactly will fall under the confidential information. So, it will include but not limited to trade secrets, business plan, financial data, and the customer list. So, these are the things that will be included under the confidential information. But here the word is written not limited to. That means the list can include some other types of confidentiality as well. So here in this agreement, the definition clause have defined certain terms, that is service, so that there must not be any ambiguity between the parties in understanding of the term service. And the second one is confidential information. Now let's move to the other clauses, that is parties. Now, in the clause of the parties, basically we identify the legal name and the addresses of all the parties. Let me give an example of the same agreement. All right. Now, this agreement is made and entered into as of this 15 September 2025 by and between ABC Corporation, party number 1, a corporation organized under the laws of India with its principal place of business at 123 Tech Lane, Bangalore. So it's the address of our ABC Corporation, that means of our party 1. Now, hereinafter the company and John Doe, an individual residing at 456 Main Street, Bangalore, herein after the consultant. Now here, John Doe is the other party and it is the address of the John Doe. So as I said, in the parties clause, it identifies the legal names. We have identified the legal names of the parties and as well as the addresses of the parties. Now, let's move to the third one, which is very important, that is term and the duration of an agreement. It basically specifies the start and the end date of agreement, that from what date this agreement will initiate or will have the effect, and till what date the agreement will terminate or will have its last effect. It can also include provisions for renewal or the termination. Including a termination clause is very important in an agreement. You should mention the certain condition under which the particular agreement will terminate. Also, a renewal clause is very important. By drafting a contract, many people, what they do, they specify the start and end date, but they forget to have a provision of renewal or the termination clause, and it is very important. Let me give you an example of such clauses. The first one is that this agreement shall commence on 1st October 2025. So what this example shows that we have already specified the start date of an agreement and shall continue for a period of 12 months. Now, this is the term, the duration of an agreement, unless terminated earlier in accordance with the provision herein. Now, we have also mentioned a clause of termination in this while drafting in this agreement, which is very important. Now, second, we have a renewal clause. The term may be renewed for successive 1-year periods upon the mutual written agreement of both the parties. So we have a renewal term, we have a termination term, and we also have a start and the end date. This is very important. This clause is very important, as many people, usually they make a common mistake while, missing out the provision of renewal and the termination clause. Now let's move towards our next clause, which is the scope of work, service, and the deliverables. Now this particular clause is very critical clause because this defines the obligation of the parties. This is the clause that defines the specific tasks that are agreed by both the parties while entering into this agreement. What is the purpose of this clause? It describes a specific task, duty, or the products to be provided by one party to the another. And as I said, it basically defines the obligations of the parties. Let's look into an example that the consultant agrees to provide the following service. Now, the consultant, in our example, John was the consultant. So, while entering into the agreement, the consultant basically agrees to provide the following services. Now, when we will see these services, we will find out that these are basically defining the obligations of the consultant. Let's look into. Number one, the design and develop a mobile application for iOS and Android platforms. As I have discussed in our earlier example, that here both the parties are agreeing for the development of an alpha app, right? So the design and development of a mobile application. Second one, deliver the source code and all related documentation after developing this app. Provide 3 months of post-launch technical support. So when the app will be launched, so here the one of the obligations that have been agreed by both the parties is to provide 3 months of post-launch technical support. Like after launch, 3 months of technical support will be provided by the consultant. Now, this basically defines the scope of the work and the service, right? It basically defines the obligations of the consultant, and these obligations are basically agreed by both the parties. Now, let's move on to our next clause, that is compensation or the payment terms. Now, compensation and the payment terms, if we look into here, we understand that in this clause, we are basically outlining the financial part of the contract. We will be outlining that what exactly, will be the payment, in according to the, in terms of mode of the payment, or the duration when it will be paid, the payment schedule, the method of the payment, all these things are defined under this clause. So what is the purpose? It outlines the financial arrangement between both the parties, including the amount, currency, payment schedule, and the method of the payment. Let's look into the example that the company shall pay the consultant a fixed of 10 lakh for the service. Right? And this is very important to have a payment schedule. Like in this clause, we have already described, we have already, mentioned that what will be the payment, what will be the, exact payment or the compensation that the company will give to the consultant. Now, it's very important to also have a payment schedule to be mentioned. Like payment shall be made in 3 installments. We have mentioned the installment. We have basically mentioned the, method how we will pay. Rupees 4 lakh upon execution of this agreement, 4 lakh upon delivering of the beta version of the application, and then 2 lakh upon final delivery. And this is very important. And here I have not given you an example, but while drafting a contract, we should also write the method of the payment, like how we will be executing our payment. Will it be by the method of cash or, online transaction or check? We should write these things very clearly, because most of the conflict usually arise in the, during on these such loopholes, right? In the payment terms, there are many disputes that arise usually when there is a conflict between the methods of the payment or the duration of the payment or the installment. These all things, mostly what the people do while drafting the agreement, they do not discuss all of these things, and they do not include all of these things in the agreement while drafting the agreement, which is very important to avoid any dispute. So we have discussed definition, parties, term and duration, scope of work, and the compensation terms. I hope you understand the core, the agreement substance section very clearly.